destroy their future, and I think every parent on the planet would agree with me. Civilization is a very specific social arrangement, a material culture that requires drawdown. Like any human arrangement, it can be questioned and it can be stopped. Now, there have been accelerants to that process of drawdown. The two biggest accelerants are industrialism and capitalism. So just like civilization depends on fossil soil, industrialism depends on fossil fuel. Industrialism also requires a social system that values speed, efficiency, production, consumption, growth, and power. Those values are brand new, maybe 200 years old, maybe, but they surround us. In fact, they besiege us. We breathe them in like air. What choice have we got? But they're more like water, and we are drowning. To quote Kirkpatrick Sale, industrial societies are shot through with inequality, injustice, instability, and incivility, all of which erode not just human society, but the human soul. Half of all Americans have been on antidepressants. Killing each other and the planet hasn't actually made us happy. I guess that's the good news. Well, it's not just history that gets written by the victors, it's the present and the future too. We have to believe their story, that this is the best of all possible worlds, and it's only getting better. In fact, we have to embrace their story, despite the fact that it goes against our interests as social mammals. Our social interests, our economic interests, our emotional interests, our parental interests, certainly our interests as living creatures who need a home. Lewis Mumford called that a magnificent bribe. Once every possibility for truly sustaining cultures has been destroyed, pulled down with the forest, sliced up with the prairie, drained away with the rivers, most people take the bribe. As if a desiccated echo chamber of techno toys could ever substitute for our connection to a living cosmos. But that's the bargain. And even the memory of another way is gone, metaphrastic now, something between prehistory and a fairy tale. So we believe that industrial civilization provides the only life worth living. It's all been for this, everything. Sentience crawled its way out of the primal sea so we could watch YouTube. Before this, life was nasty, loose, and short, lived in mud huts or caves or something. Never mind the long, strong bones and perfect dentition of our ancestors. Never mind the egalitarian grave goods. Never mind that those caves contain some of the most wondrous art ever made. Pablo Picasso went to Lascaux to look at the paintings, and you know what he said when he came out? We have invented nothing. He saw it. Our first art was the megafauna and the megafemales who gave us life. Our first art was a prayer of participation and thanksgiving. That's our true history, participation and thanksgiving. And if the culture on offer leaves us with an empty, nameless hunger, well, there's always further immersion in the spectacle to feel something. The spectacle is where social life is commodified into an image. So to quote Guy Debord, all that once was directly lived has become mere representation. So being declines into having, and then having becomes merely appearing. There are teenagers right now who are having plastic surgery specifically to look better on Facebook. And if we are not horrified by that, then as a species we should simply stop having children. We owe the young an apology for the unbearable emptiness of it all, a human culture that isn't a culture. It's an anti-culture, designed to destroy, not to connect. Speech has been reduced to strings of consonants on a screen. Food, in the words of Jim Kunstler, has lost its ceremonial trappings of communion with other people and become a furtive solitary pursuit, a sugar addiction with overtones of nutritional masturbation. Parenting has been reduced to simply stuffing children with corporate products, body and soul. By the time she's 17, the average American child has spent 2,000 hours with her parents, 11,000 hours in school, 40,000 hours with the mass media. And sex has been reduced to the rancid pleasures of sadism. Our global masters prefer us stupid, ugly, and cruel, and they are winning. Meanwhile, the approved response of most of our public intellectuals is a smug stance of useless irony. Then there's the other emptiness, the bleeding out of life itself. Appalachia without mountains, skies without birds, oceans without mammals or crustaceans or even fish. The plankton populations are crashing. They're the bottom of the food chain and the source of most of our oxygen. The only things increasing are the carbon and the heat, the desperation and the devastation. And of course, the profits of the 1%. Which brings me to capitalism. Capitalism has been another accelerant to extraction and drawing. Capitalism takes living creatures and their homes, it declares them private property, it turns them into dead commodities, and then it accumulates those commodities into private wealth. It's a pyramid scheme of death. The Occupy movement has staked this claim on being the 99%, and I think that that's self-evident. Capitalism is the 1% taking from the 99%. But add this, 98% of the world's old-growth forests are gone. 99% of the world's prairies are gone. That means 99% of the past flowers, and 99% of the prairie dogs, and 99% of the bison. The wealth is created from their dead bodies. The point isn't to distribute that wealth, it's to stop the death. Now, what drives a capitalist economy is a ceaseless quest for investment opportunities. So they make profits, their capital grows, and then they have to invest the new capital to make more profits. The only way to have more investment opportunities is if more producing and consuming take place. In fact, if a capitalist economy doesn't grow by 3% a year, it collapses. What that means is that total consumption of goods and services has to double every 20 years. Now, the last time I looked, our planet had exactly 197 million square miles and not 1 inch more. You cannot have infinite growth on a finite planet. Capitalism is literally insane. And yes, thank you. Good card. It's consuming the planet to death. There's a third accelerant. It's the ruling religion of the planet, and it's called patriarchy. Now, patriarchy produces a psychology of profound entitlement based on a masculine violation imperative. That imperative includes breaking the sexual boundaries of women and children, the cultural and political boundaries of indigenous people, the biological boundaries of rivers and forests and prairies, the genetic boundaries of other species, the physical boundaries of the atom itself. We will not save life on this planet unless we dismantle patriarchy. Now, you will be punished for saying that out loud. Gather up your courage, because we've got to do it anyway. Put all this together, the entire culture is sociopathic. The entitlement, the sadism, that bottomless hunger to conquer. Oh, you'll never reach the end of it. What we are reaching is complete biotic collapse. The very creation myth of Western civilization tells men to dominate, to conquer, to go forth and multiply. No hunter-gatherer is told by God to willfully overshoot the land's carrying capacity, and no marginally rational person would listen to such a God. To repeat the words of your very own Dennis Steele, the gods of empire are not the gods of Vermont. I'm praying that's true, Vermont. The gods of empire have had a 10,000-year reign, and they have laid waste to the world. I'm going to quote the main character from a really popular book. Subdue the earth and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. Well, everything has been subdued, everything. The mountains, the oceans, the climate itself. Nothing is safe and nothing is off limits. And most of us are just holding our breath and hoping that somehow, somewhere, some bacteria survive. And then there's Vermont. That's the little state up near Canada with those cows or something. No one's paying attention, not yet. But you are kindling a spark between Canada and those cows. It's going to serve as a signal fire to the ready and the weary both. Here, now, finally. Feed that spark with equal measures of hope and courage, and it will be a blaze of rebellion. And when rebellion turns to real resistance, with discipline and determined strategy, you'll have a wildfire that could light up the world. My first hope is in your name, You named yourselves after your mountains. I'm going to quote John Muir, speaking of another mountain range. It is by far the grandest of all the special temples of nature I was ever permitted to enter, full of God's thoughts, a place of peace and safety amid the most exalted grandeur and eager enthusiastic action, a new song, a place of beginnings, abounding in first lessons on life, mountain building, eternal, invincible, unbreakable order, with sermons in stones, storms, trees, flowers, and animals, brimful with humanity. I hope you know your mountains as temples. I hope you hear sermons in stones and storms. I hope you see animals brimful with humanity. I also hope you have a plain song for the dead, and I hope it doesn't break your hearts. This is who has been taken from you. Eastern elk, caribou, catamounts, wolverines, wolves. There were trees 6 feet in diameter. That's what trees are supposed to look like. There were shy spring flowers whose names we will never know, and all of them have been gone so long, we don't even miss them. They should ache like a phantom limb. And then there's your river full of ghosts. The first main stem dam went up in 1798, and by 1808, the Connecticut River strain of the Atlantic salmon were gone forever. Shad and blue-black herring were so uncountable, their rivers were called black and boiling. There were so many fish. I have never in my life seen a river black and boiling with fish. That's what rivers are supposed to look like.